I remember when I was a little girl, I saw them. When I was a little girl, pastors. When I was a little girl, the pastor made love to his daughter. When I was a little girl, the pastor molested the young girls in the church, one after the other. When I was a little girl, I saw my pastor. He did. He preached the whole message with his dick on hard. When I was a little girl, raped their own daughter. When I was a little girl. When I became an adult, I married a pastor. After 25 years, I did. I walked away. And now, I'm in love. Hear my story in pastorsexwife.org.
Damn. Forgot to do this. Oh, yeah. It ain't over, motherfucker.
What they think about you. Here's 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 what they think about. Fuck all y'all.
Now, please bear in mind, I said when I was a little girl, I remember in church, and I used to sit on the second row, and our pastor then, God rest his soul, was preaching. And I remember as a little girl, I saw something in his pants, and I didn't know what it was, but it was sticking out, you know, and was going down his leg, and I just didn't know what it was. But all I do know is that through the entire message, he preached like that. And I remember, you know, thinking as a little girl, something, I just didn't know. And I remember, you know, everybody, mother's board was getting with him, the organist, you know, had tuned up, and he was just going on. And I realized after I got as an adult what it was. It was his dick on hard, and through the entire message. So I don't know what that means, and I know some of you will say immediately right off the bat that, well, honey, you know, maybe he had prostate. No, he didn't have a prostate issue. Bottom line is that's what it was. I've had in my proximity in the church world also been exposed to the pastor and the organist getting into an argument right during the Sunday morning service. And I remember the organist then picked up a chair, God rest his soul, over his head, and he was getting ready to throw it at, he told the pastor, he's like, I'll knock you, I'll throw this chair. And the pastor was like, you do it, you know. And I'm like, as a little girl, I'm observing this. I've had in my proximity pastors that molest their stepdaughters in the church, and young girls in the church for years. Kept right on singing and kept right on preaching. I've had in my proximity pastors that participated in incest with their own biological daughters. And kept right on singing and kept right on preaching. I have had so much, or have been exposed to so much in the church, that it's a wonder that I still have, or am persuaded of this opinion, that nothing shall be able to separate me from the love of God. I heard on the news not too long ago of a pastor whose wife had bore him 8 children. And he cut her up, literally cut her up, killed her, cut her up, and put her in the deep freeze, wherever. And the oldest daughter was privy to that. And I the story goes that he continued to preach. And he would preach messages about the mercy of God and the forgiveness of God, and he would look over at the kids, and especially the oldest daughter, and he would say things like, you know, God is a forgiving God and none of us are perfect. And so, you know, you have children that, you know, is raised up in the church, and they really do love God, but there's so much that's going on in the church that's so twisted, until it's amazing if people actually come out of this understanding that St. John 3:16 is what it is. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. The elementary, the ABCs, the basics of the gospel. It's a wonder any of us come out having a right relationship with God. I was taught when I was coming up that, you know, if you want to be a successful female, you got to be able to say, you got a man. And so my surrounding was that when you get married, you're on your way to success, and you've accomplished, and you're doing good. And so I remember when I did get married, one of the mothers came to me and said, now, since he's going into the ministry, you've got to take the back seat, and you've got to be silent, and you've got to be quiet. And, you know, I just believed pretty much everything that was said to me coming up in the church. Marriage, marriage, marriage. I remember at age 17, I tried to commit suicide. And the reason for this is because I was engaged to be married. And out of school, having graduated early, I'm a businesswoman, if you would. I'm a goal setter, if you would, and engaged to be married, and, you know, at the ring, the house, the utilities were turned on. This is just how close it was to the wedding date. The wedding party in place, wedding dresses, invitations, everything. Everything was done. And the wedding was called off. Never knew the reason, but nonetheless the wedding was called off. And I tried to commit suicide. And because I felt like a failure, you know. They told us, you know, you got to be able to say, I got a man. Not many days, might as well say not many days later, I was married. God came into church, and we kind of dated, if you want to call it that. It really wasn't dating. Wasn't no probing. It wasn't no history finding. It was none of that. You understand? My goal was, you know, getting married. Mine and a whole bunch of other girls and ladies in the church. And, you know, if I'm talking to America, talking to you now, I may as well just keep it real. I would allow, you know, him to touch me. Never took my clothes off, but would allow him to touch me. And felt real nasty, felt real dirty. And I remember in an effort to stop it, I said, well, you know, I remember one time, I'm like, okay, tomorrow, I'm going to make him stop. And I said, you know, we're not supposed to be doing this unless we're married. Well, okay, well, let's get married. And within a week we were married, so that was 4 months and married, but the marriage lasted 25 years. I remember when I was a little girl, I saw them. When I was a little girl, pastors. When I was a little girl, the pastor made love to his daughter. When I was a little girl, the pastor molested the young girls in the church, one after the other. When I was a little girl, I saw my pastor. He did. He preached the whole message with a stick on hard. When I was a little girl, raped their own daughter. When I was a little girl. When I became an adult, I married a pastor. After 25 years, I did. I walked away. And now, I'm in love. Hear my story at pastorsexwife.org.